I'm going to see, microphone works. All right, well, I am honored to be here to talk about celebrating Utah women. And when I heard the topic, I knew that I needed to talk about my grandmothers, who are both Utah women and have had a huge effect on my life and on lots of people's lives. I want to talk about Margaret and Amy. Let me tell you about Amy Malvina Young Valentine, my maternal grandmother. She was born in Mexico, in the Mormon colonies. She had a great upbringing, highly educated, had really educated parents, had just a great childhood. When she grew up, she went to BYU to get her degree, and her parents were called on a mission, and actually the first presidency at the time was like, oh, and Amy too, we want you to go. And she's like, all right. And so she went and worked really hard and came back and married Lee Valentine, and the tales of their romance and their marriage are legendary. They had a very happy marriage. They had 4 children, and she was a force to be reckoned with. She was very educated, worked the whole time that she was, her husband was getting his PhD, and as she was raising kids, and she taught Spanish, and she did lots of different things. Tragically, her husband died unexpectedly after they came back from Stanford and had come back from being mission presidents down in Argentina. And a couple days after his funeral, she took over all of his Spanish classes at BYU. And to me, like, I remember her telling me that as a teenager, and just with a straight face, she said, the hardest thing I ever had to do was to teach your dad, my husband's classes, and take over his office a couple days after his funeral. And, then the conversation went on, and I've thought about that a lot since. I have so many follow-up questions, and it's too late. Do your family history, talk to your elders. Now listen, we could be here for a really, really long time if I read you her entire CV, right? If I just told you all the things that she did, but I'm gonna tell you a couple of them. I'm gonna brag about my grandma. The Reed Smoot Outstanding Citizen of the Year Award, President of the Provo-Orem Chamber of Commerce. Utah County Chairman for the American Cancer Society, Commerce Women's Division, Utah Mother of the Year, member of the Provo Cultural Affairs Board, Utah County Housing Authority, member of the National Council of Women, honored Utah Association of Women in 1979, a delegate for the International Women's Year Conference in Houston, and also a candidate for Congress. Yeah, she ran. She didn't win, but does it matter? She tried. I feel like she should get points for that. Very, very accomplished. So many things, and traveled across the world, not only taught, but wrote and spoke, and just had a huge influence on a lot of people's lives. And don't you like that pillow? That pillow was in her living room all growing up. A woman's place is in the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. So, thanks, Grandma. Let me tell you about Margaret Bergen, also a Utah woman. Isn't she beautiful? That's her picture when she was a beauty queen at the BYU. Fun fact, she did it for the scholarship money. That was always the caveat when we were told she was a beauty queen. It was like, well, no, it was for the scholarship money so she could get an education. It was like, okay, we got it. Thanks, Mom. She was born on the 4th of July. I know her as Grandma Buzz. I always thought it was because she was busy as a bee, because she never sat still. She was always one of those. I'm kind of like that. But it was actually because when she was a baby, she didn't cry. She just kind of made a buzzing sound. Oh. The thing I love about my grandma a lot that may have to do with nothing, it may have to do with everything, was that she was very, very poor, grew up very, very poor, and had such a sweet tooth for chocolate that she would make up this concoction where she would mix cocoa and sugar and water and make a little homemade fudge. And when I heard that about her, I was like, I got you, Grandma. I feel you. We're related. Her father died when when she was 14, she was the oldest of a lot of kids. They had to move in with their grandma, and another family was moving there. It was rough. They didn't have much at all. She was very smart, went to school, was very active, but she was like the second mom, and she worked all the time. She didn't really have a social life at all. She ended up going to BYU. She's an accomplished painter, and a lot of her professors asked her to work on different things. She also graduated, which, if you think about it at that time, that both of my grandmothers graduated from college, was quite remarkable, had a huge impact on our family and our family's history. She went on a mission and served a dramatic mission where she got to portray the mother of Christ in pageants on her mission, which I think is really great. She came home. When she was going to college, she didn't have a social life. Friends, dating was not an option because she would go home back to Midvale to help her mom support the family. So hard-working woman. She ended up marrying a widower and inherited a 5-year-old son. One of the most beautiful tributes to my grandma at her funeral was when that son, my Uncle Kent, said he never felt like a stepson or an adopted son. In fact, some of his siblings didn't even know he wasn't their full sibling till they were teenagers. I didn't know he was a half uncle or whatever. I just laugh because it's not until I was 18. So the way that she loved and the way that she nurtured had a huge effect. Now, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through her CV, but I will say that she was very involved in the community. A thing that I love about her that she did for businesses and like even a Sunday school class. There's this awesome story of when somebody was doing like a Sunday school lesson in church, right? Like just, okay, a lesson. She painted this 6-foot Christus, like oil painting, gorgeous. All of her kids fought over who got it, at the end of her life. That's just who she was. She was always painting, always creating floats, signs for businesses, just everywhere. She served on a lot of community boards. But more than anything, her home was a welcome place where every kid was invited, where everybody was invited to come on in. And there were always treats, always. These two Utah women, interestingly enough, knew each other. They went to BYU together, and at that time, the campus was quite small, but who knew that when they would grow up, their kids would fall in love and get married. And so it was really neat because in their later years, my grandma Amy, and I imagine her, she's in a nice Nordstrom suit and her hair's done and her nails are done and she's just come from some committees and some meetings in Salt Lake. She would regularly drive down and on her way to her home in Provo, stop by in Orem just to visit with my grandma Margaret, who I imagine, hair totally done, makeup, of course, full face, wearing a dress and a apron, working in the rose garden or making a treat or watching some kids. My grandma Amy would regularly stop and they would stop and visit. And how I wish that I had been a fly on the wall to know what they talked about, but they did that for years and years. And my grandma Amy would say to me often, "It must be so great to be related to Margaret. She's so beautiful and so talented and so nurturing, and I wish I had more kids like her, and she's just such a graceful person. You're so lucky to be related to her." And my grandma Margaret would say to me regularly, "It must be so wonderful to be related to Amy. She's so intelligent and she's traveled the world and she's so sophisticated and influential. Oh, you're so lucky to be related to her." And I thought that was so interesting that they independently would pull me aside to say that. And you know what? They both are right. It is pretty great. When I think about Utah women and our history, where we've come from and where we're going, I feel like our greatest strengths, in fact, I know our greatest strength comes in our connections. It's our association with each other. It's our relationships that I feel are our biggest strengths. And that's what my grandmothers taught me, and that's kind of what I see when I think about that. A lot of times we have this tendency, I think, to separate ourselves, whether it's conscious or unconscious, like into different groups, just according to the things that like we're really passionate about, or the things that really make us mad. You know, I mean, aren't we all kind of like that? But the thing that I feel about my grandmothers is that they both supported each other, even though they had different interests and backgrounds, and they both worked really, really hard. And a lot of issues that we think about today, we think about like, well, do you work or stay at home or do you do this? And they just worked hard all the time, like doing everything. And so I feel like they get us in our day as well. So I do improv, and so we make up plays and musicals and songs like on the spot, right? With different troupes. The Thrillionaires are on the TV show Show-Offs, and a lot of people are like, how do you do that? And this is how, and this has a lot of application, I think, to how we live our lives and how we face the future as Utah women. The first one is trust. Who you work with, you have to trust them. You have to trust that they're in it, right? That they want it to be the best, that you want to do the best, that you're all playing the same game, right? And so this is this idea of yes and. Who you work with is you work with talented people, right? Like if you go on the stage and you're like, I respect you, and you're at the top of your game, then we're gonna have some fun. Also, you add to what you're given. The big thing of yes and is that when somebody gives you an offering, whatever it is, even if you think it's a dumb idea, you're like, oh yes, and I will add to that. You don't, go on stage and say, hi mom, can I have a slice of pizza? And you go, I'm not your mom. It stops, yeah, it's bad. It's not funny, it's bad. Improv, you go, okay, all right, they're doing this. And which leads me to my next point. You gotta check your ego. It can't be about you. Like, well, am I gonna be the main person? Am I gonna get all the lines? If you try to worry about that, then it's not gonna be interesting. It's not fun to watch. You don't get to play make-believe. So what does this have to do with Utah women? Well, I feel like as we look to who we are and who will be in the future, it's tempting to separate ourselves into our categories. And I get why we do this, but the real influence we have and the way to lead meaningful and authentic ways is how we choose to live. So what does that really mean? Like, what do we get to choose? I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. We don't have time in this presentation to talk about all the ways we could lead. These are the categories that I feel like we're all gonna have to deal with in some way, right? Some people may say it's in a Facebook or a Twitter post, a curated Instagram post. Is it in the political realm or how we vote, or in the home, or cultural change, or status, education? Writing, talking on the radio, caring for the sick, shedding light on the forgotten. There's so many different ways that we can have influence, right? And I feel like our focus could be, and oftentimes is in our relationship with each other. Yes, we're stronger than we're together, but also this idea of improv, of yes and, our ideas are better when we're adding to each other's, right? Especially when we are an expert in a field, right? We need to round up. I was gonna say it's like I feel like we're getting the wagon, so we're rounding them up, right? Like we're getting stuff done, because there's so much to do. Often I daydream about the apocalypse, like many of you. Like a lot. Like I probably think about it more than I should. Because I always think, so when civilization does break down, because it will. God, have you watched TV? It's gonna be real, real bad. And I'm not gonna really have a lot to offer because I don't know how to I don't know how to establish a plumbing system. You know what I mean? I don't know how to build an engine. These are the practical skills that I think, well, should I learn how to do that now? And I think, no, it's too late. And, because I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna I might learn how to weld, but probably just for art, for fun. Listen, I've gone down this rabbit hole a lot. And so I feel like I can barter for cans of goods, I feel like I could put on a show and barter for a can of beans or some Band-Aids or something. That's my plan. Please don't ever take that plan, because it took me a long time to figure it out. You know, I have these big barrels of wheat that my in-laws gave me. I don't even know how to open up. It's like sealed. You have to get like a key thing. If anybody wants them, you can use them when it all goes down. It's gonna be bad. But when I think about the apocalypse, I do feel like that's when we're gonna see all of our talents. That's when we're all gonna come together, because we're gonna have to, you know, Judy, you've got the antibiotics, right? You know, Karen, she's gonna get stuff done. We gotta do this together. Historically, we were told that we couldn't have it all. Then we were told we could have it all. Then we were told we could have it all, but not at the same time. And now we have it all, and we're wondering, why do we have to do it all? And we do everything, and we don't want it all. That's just my favorite slide. I feel like I could just show that and then walk off. This is what I feel in my heart as I think about the future of Utah women, or the future of women in general. And we had learned from our mistakes, right? And by extending past our breaking points, I feel like there is a call from my grandmothers of like, okay, settle down. I do. And I certainly want some of these really serious issues that we have to be solved by the time my daughters and granddaughters come to the stage. I certainly hope that we can collectively solve some of these pressures that we deal with. We really don't have time to talk about this, but I'm just going to show you this slide. These are just some ideas that, you know, when I'm on the treadmill, I think, what do we need to do? Okay, some of these. Again, we don't have time. These are my grandmothers, and I love them, and I think about them a lot. And how we lead and we influence really can't be planned for. And that is the final point that I want to talk about when we have these sort of discussions about, you know, what are we going to do in the future? Just know something's coming, and you're not going to see it coming, and it's probably horrible. I feel like I would be remiss unless I said that. Because, you know, I mean, we can do it, yeah, but it's gonna be so bad. Listen, my husband tried to prepare for a future, and I just want to tell you really quick, he took an aptitude test when he was in college, because he was like finishing college, and he's like, okay, should I go to law school? Like, what should I do? I don't know. And so he took this test. It took 20 hours. He went back. It was in the 90s where you had to go get the results. He went back, and the career counselor was super, super nervous, and he was like, this has never happened before. Come in. And he was like, what should I be? What's my dream? And he's like, this has never happened before. But the careers test says that your perfect job is a circus performer. True story. You can't make that up. Listen, he became a theater director. It's like the same thing. But what I'm saying is that you don't know, and you think you know, and you think you're raising your daughters and your granddaughters in a certain way, but we don't know. And you know, I want to take Margaret's lead. I want to be like Margaret, and I want to paint and put paintings up in my home, and I always want to have a bar of chocolate that I sneak to kids. Like, I want to be that person, and I want to have a beautiful rose garden, and I want to incorporate the things that I learned in my life to actually living my life instead of waiting for it to happen, and I want that kind of nurturing, and I want to live my life like Amy, and I want to be involved, and I want to do stuff and get stuff done and travel the world and have a perfectly timed eye roll. Which she did, and it kills me. I think about her, and I want to be like that. You know, I do want to mention, without totally ruining the vibe, that both of my grandmothers spent a lot of time caring for the sick and dying. My grandma, Valentine, took care of both of her parents for years and years and years. My grandma, Bergen, cared for her husband for years and years as he was dying. And it didn't stop them from loving and going forward and smiling and nurturing in ways. And I am caring for my terminally ill husband right now. And I think about them all of the time when I think, oh, this is the worst. I just think of them either rolling their eyes or grabbing a bar of chocolate, or just sitting and saying, yeah, it's the worst. And then getting up and getting to work, because that's what they did. And when I think about the future of Utah women, if you look at the statistics for caregiving and who takes care of the caregiving, spoiler, most of you will. And the statistics are so bad. What it does to your health and your bank account and your career, it's horrible. It is. It's like, think about how bad you think it is, and times it by 10. It's so bad. But it's something, again, what do we have to do? We have to do it all. So we're going to be able to figure it out. We're going to crack the code, not only for that and how we can nurture and take care of people, but also how we can move forward and make things better for everybody. And the last thing that I want to say is that Amy and Margaret were very different, but they were friends, and they've been gone for years now, but their influence is still felt all over the country, all over the world. I still get people stopping going, oh, you're Margaret's granddaughter. Oh, I remember Amy. That kind of influence, that kind of power is how you lead. And it's not just in what you do and what you like to do, because that changes. Jobs and status and things change. But what doesn't change is our relationship with each other and the influence that we have because of our connections and how we feel when we're with that person. And so maybe we can't do it all, or we don't want to do it all, but that is a story that I want to add to and be a part of. Thank you.